Welcome to the channel, everyone, and this is Let's Play MTG. And here on this channel, we will abilities twice, use electrostatic plumber, and so you don't necessarily need to have. What's going on, everybody? This is Anthony Lee with Let's Play MTG. So today we have a very interesting type of video, and as you might see on the title, what cards would you possibly win with in Commander? Well, I'm here to actually tell you very special cards that are win condition cards. I will go over all the Commander legal win condition cards, and there's two special exceptions, or exemptions I should say, that I'll have in the very end of the video. So definitely stay tuned to the end of the video to find out what the two exemptions are and the reasons why they're exempt from the overall list. So let's go ahead and start off with the very first card of this special win condition episode, and that would be Approach of the Second Sun. Now, I do have the special archived art form on the screen for you. Approach of the Second Sun is a sorcery that costs 6 and a white, and it says if this spell was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, puts Approach the Second Sun into its owner's library 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. So this card's easily being able to be played again, especially if you have some kind of draw or any way to search for the card again and play the card again to be able to win the game. Alright, going on next, we have Azorsello Couture. Not exactly sure how to pronounce the last part of the name, but it is a human advisor that costs 3, a whiter blue for the hybrid mana for a 3/5 creature. And this creature says, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a filibuster counter on Azors. And then if Azors has 5 or more filibuster counters on it, you win the game. So, especially if you play something like Doubling Season and are able to double the counter every upkeep, you put 2 filibuster counters on it. So that could help you speed up the process to be able to win the game. And then whenever a source deals damage to you, remove a filibuster counter from Azors. So this card is obviously going to be a really quick and immediate target for some kind of removal or board wipe or anything like that, or removing its ability, but it's definitely going to want your opponents to get rid of this card as soon as possible. So the next card up we have is Barren Glory. It's an enchantment for 4 and 2 white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no permanents other than Barren Glory and have no cards in your hand, you win the game. So this one is going to be a little bit more difficult because you need to completely erase your board. You would need to possibly play like a Navinaral's Disc, tap it, wipe everything out, you're gonna need something to destroy everything you have but itself. So you're gonna need to do some kind of everything on the battlefield or everything on your own side of the battlefield gone, and this be the only card in your hand that you're casting. So you would have to tap your mana first to put it in your mana pool to blow up everything that you have and then play this card. So the conditions to be met to be able to play this is going to be really difficult, but you can design your deck specifically around this card to try to play it. Alright, next card up we have is Biovisionary. This one's actually one of the, this is one of the easier ones to actually be able to pull off. It is a human wizard for 1, a green and a blue for a 2/3. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 more creatures named Biovisionary, you win the game. So you could easily just create copies of this creature, and there are so many ways to be able to create copies of this. Um, so yeah, just make 4 copies of this, or 3 copies of it actually, because it counts itself and then the 3 other copies. And it's at the end step, so you could do this during your turn on the second main phase, and then end the second main phase, and then you're good to go. You win the game. So yeah, this one's going to be really easy to be able to pull off. Next up, we have Celestial Convergence. It's an enchantment, costs 2 and 2 white. Celestial Convergence comes into play with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove an omen counter from Celestial Convergence. If there are no more omen counters on Celestial Convergence, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest life total, the game is a draw. So you could potentially end up having the game as a draw. So you really want to focus on a life gain deck, which a few of these cards really do promote for life gain. So you could have multiple win condition cards in a life gain deck. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you remove one. So every turn, you're going to want to just continually pile on life and potentially stop your opponents from gaining life to try to ensure that you are the person that has the most life when this card resolves. Alright, next up we have Chance Encounter. It's an enchantment for 2 and 2 red. Whenever you win a coin flip, put a luck counter on Chance Encounter. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Chance Encounter has 10 or more luck counters on it, you win the game. So this one would definitely see home and just let's flip a coin. Well, usually we roll dice instead of coin flip. Evens, odds for heads and tails and stuff like that. But this card actually is the must-have in any kind of coin flip commander deck. So I would definitely include it in the coin flip decks just because you potentially have an easy and immediate win as long as it stays on the battlefield when it's time to resolve. Next up we have Darksteel Reactors, an artifact that costs 4. Darksteel Reactors indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on Darksteel Reactor. When Darksteel Reactor has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So this one's actually kind of cool. Charge counters. Charge counters, there are a few cards that allow you to put charge counters on other creatures or artifacts and things like that. So if you have a deck that's revolved around being able to get charge counters and various doublers and things like that, then I would highly recommend to put this card in a charge counter type deck. So the whole deck, instead of revolving around a commander, it's revolved around this. Next card up, we have Epic Struggle. Epic Struggle is probably my favorite out of this entire list. It is an enchantment for 2 and 2 green. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more creatures, you win the game. It's one of the easiest things to do. It is great in any deck that runs green. You're gonna want to make tokens. Tokens is the easiest way to do this. The only exception without tokens is like elves. Elves, you could just spam at elves all day long, because elves are just crazy busted. Card draw, mana, and swarm the field. So many lords. So yeah, this card is going to be pretty easy to be able to win the game if you have a really good token strategy. Next up, we have Fischl Sovereign. It is a 4/6 cat beast that costs 4 and 2 white. It has vigilance and lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. Yeah. Commander, we start at 40 life. Let's see, that should be 40 in the camera. Might be backwards, not sure. Um, but you start off with 40. So if you can get this out as quick as possible and potentially gain some extra life, plus it has lifelink itself, you will win the game at your upkeep. And of course, a lot of these cards have the beginning of the upkeep. Um, so sometimes you want to try to, if it's not triggered but it's activated, in order to try to get the effect, then you're going to want to try to do it on your opponent's end step. That's the opponent just before it's your turn. That way you can untap, upkeep, win. Alright, let's go ahead and go on to the next card, and it's Happily Ever After. Happily Ever After is an enchantment for 2 and a white. Whenever Happily Ever After enters the battlefield, each player gains 5 life and draws a card. So, starts off kind of group huggish type of card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 5 colors among permanents you control, there are 6 or more card types among permanents you control, and or cards in your graveyard, and your life total is greater than or equal to your starting life total, you win the game. So you definitely need to break this down and be able to successfully do each one of those steps in order to win the game. So definitely, yes, it's a cheaper enchantment, but there's a lot of steps you have to go to in order to get this to resolve. Now, it could go into a life gain deck, but you're going to want the 5 color deck to be able to successfully activate this win condition. Alright, going on to the next one. This is also another fairly easy one to be able to set off. It's definitely going to be a quick target for removal. It is Helix Pinnacle for a green enchantment. It has Shroud, so it cannot be the target of spells or abilities. For X, you put X tower counters on Helix Pinnacle. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game. Doubling Season again. Doubling Season helps with so many of these. So, if you put 25 mana, now you get 50 counters with a Doubling Season. But anytime you have leftover mana, you want to put any leftover mana that you have, unless you're playing instants for anything else. Obviously, you want to focus heavily on this. You want to put any leftover mana into this. That way, you can just stack up as quick as possible to be able to win the game. And you could play this turn 1. You just slap a forest down, tap it, and then bam. Quicker than you would think, you suddenly now have 100. You could have heavy ramp in the deck to be able to get this off. You obviously want to have some search to be able to find this. If you don't get it in your opening hand, to be able to play it as quick as possible. Alright, next card is Hellkite Tyrant. It is a 6/5 dragon that costs 4 and 2 red. That has flying and trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. Treasure tokens is also really nice to be able to swipe those. So if someone's playing like Smothering Tithe or something like that, this could be really advantageous to be able to put out to be able to possibly win. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So yeah, this can be like in Boros colors. This can be great because you have like a Smothering Tithe, or an opponent might have a Smothering Tithe, or something like that, and you're just really stacking a lot of treasure tokens out. And treasure tokens are technically artifacts. So this card can be crazy. So I would say it's definitely good in a dragon deck to be able to search out for it, to be able to play it, but to also be able to have that win kind to steal all these artifacts, use them however you want, but also potentially have a win con in it. I think it's pretty cool. Alright, let's go to the next card. It is Jace Wielder of Mysteries. It is a legendary Planeswalker Jace for 1 and 3 blue. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Usually you would lose, but instead you get to win. +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of the library into their graveyard, draw a card. So usually with this you would almost target yourself. And then -8, draw 7 cards that if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So 2 alternate things. You draw 7 cards. After that, then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So let's just say you have 7 cards in your library. You get to successfully draw all 7 cards. And now there's no cards in your library. Well, you would win on the -8. But on the top one, for its basically static ability, if you would draw a card when it has no cards in it, you win the game. So let's just say you -8, there's only 6 in the library, you need to draw 7, you would automatically win the game. So they're very similar, but they are just a little bit different. Alright, next up we have Laboratory Maniac. Laboratory Maniac is a 2/2 human wizard that costs 2 and a blue. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. So definitely something to pair with the Jace. And because the effects are so similar, you basically double your chances of being able to get that specific type of win con out. Alright, going on next, we have Lilias Contract. It's an enchantment for 3 and 2 black. When Lilias Contract enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and lose 4 life. That's not too bad. And then, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. So this is definitely going towards the demon tribal. And you could also put the shapeshifter changelings in there, because they're technically demons and they're going to have different names. So it would greaten your chances that much more to be able to get this card off. And you're running black, but you could run like a red-black because there are some other demons if you also put red in the deck. So yeah, this actually isn't too hard, especially if you focus on that tribal. Alright, going on the next card. This one is actually pretty cool, especially if you have, like what I personally enjoy, is the big beefy creatures. And this is something I might actually want to put into my dinosaur tribal commander deck. And that is Mael's Arya for a red, green, and white. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control if you control a creature with power 5 or greater. So if you have big beefy creatures that you get out, they get to get even stronger. And then gain 10 life if you control a creature with power 10 or greater. So if you have 5 or greater, they're going to keep getting stronger, so eventually you will get to 10 or greater. And then you win the game if you control a creature with power 20 or greater. So let's just say I put Galta out. I would be gaining 10 life and putting a +1/+1 counter on each creature I control. So that would be a 13/13. Or if I have like the Quartzwood Crasher, and I'm swinging for a bunch of trample damage and get a 20/20 creature, then I can easily and successfully win the game by having power 20 or greater. So I personally really like this card because it can make your creatures bigger and gain life, and then eventually just win the game. Alright, going on next, we have a land. So this is a very unique land. It is Maze's End. Maze's End enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add 1 to your mana pool. Or you could pay 3 tap, return Maze's End to its owner's hand, search your library for a gate card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. So as long as you have all the different gates, actually I think there's 11, 11 or 12. It's Commander. You can't have duplicate copies of gates. Yeah, gates kind of suck. In Commander, they're tap lands that you don't even gain life or scry or have a way to bring it in untapped. So it'll slow you down a lot. But if your deck's really focused about pumping out gates, you could win the game by having 10 or more gates when Mazes ends on the battlefield. Alright, so Mechanized Production. It's an enchantment aura that costs 2 and 2 blue. Enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. So it's basically like a repeating sculpting steel. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. And what's really crazy, treasure tokens. I don't think they were thinking about treasure tokens when they made this card. This card, the treasure tokens are named treasure token. So if you simply have 10 treasure tokens or 8 treasure tokens, you win the game, which is crazy to think about. Treasure tokens have a few ways to be able to win the game through various cards. So yeah, that is actually pretty good. Next up, and no, this is definitely not the gruesome, bloody video game, even though I think the video game is pretty awesome. This is Mortal Kombat with a C, not a K. It is an enchantment that costs 2 and 2 black. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 20 or more creatures in your graveyard, you win the game. So, possibly in an aristocrat style deck, you want to just flood your graveyard with as many creatures as you can, as fast as you can when this is out, and then, bam, win the game with a bunch of dead guys. So, yeah, that is Mortal Kombat. Alright, going on to the next one, we have Near Death Experience. It's an enchantment that costs 2 and 3 white. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 1 life, you win the game. So this one is interesting. You could do pair it with a card like Worship, that your life total, if it's less than 1, becomes 1. There's a new card that either just came out or is coming out that deals with having that 1 life. This one actually might appear a little bit more here in the next month or so, of people actually finding this card and wanting to play this card, especially with a few cards that it does pair with, to be able to get that 1 life safely without slowly whittling yourself down to 1. So this card might actually get a little bit better, especially when the Innistrad Midnight Hunt is released. Alright, going on to the next one. Speaking of treasure tokens, Revel Enrich is an enchantment for 4 and a black. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure token. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasure tokens, you win the game. Now, I don't know why Wizards made it 10 or more and then really started going crazy with the making treasure tokens, because this is going to be so easy in a treasure token style deck to be able to pull off that. I mean, not being errated or banned is kind of crazy, because there are so many different ways to be able to get an insane amount of treasure tokens to be able to have this card easily go off on the following upkeep. Alright, so let's go ahead and go on to the next one. It is Simic Ascendancy, and it has a very good 2-card combo with the Body of Research in Commander. But Simic Ascendancy is an enchantment for a green and a blue. For 1 a green and a blue, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. So also like Hydra's Growth, where you double the number of +1/+1 counters on something, or the Fractal Harness, when you attack, you double the counter +1/+1 counters on the creature. This one's actually pretty darn easy to be able to get off, especially if your deck keep it in Simic colors and really focus on the +1/+1 counters like Hardened Scales, Doubling Season, Primal Vigor, or Parallel Lives. I don't know. There's so many different doubling cards that double this or that or anything, but even flooding those +1/+1 counters through a variety of different ways, it's going to be fairly easy to be able to get this off. Plus, you can dump mana into this card itself to put +1/+1 counters onto a card to get a growth counter on it. So going on to the next card, we have Test of Endurance. It's an enchantment for 2 and 2 white. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 50 or more life, you win the game. Very straightforward. And in Commander, again, with the having extra life totals, there is several cards to be able to just lump all together to be able to win the game. You start off with 40, so gaining life with most of these certain life total win the game conditions are going to be so easy to be able to pull off, and having multiple copies, not multiple copies of a single card, but multiple cards with that kind of win condition, it increases your chances quite a bit to be able to successfully pull off with a win condition card. And then last but not least, for the legal or legally played Commander card, is Thassa's Oracle. Merfolk Wizard, that's a 1/3 that costs 2 blue. And this is a very well played win condition card. It says, when Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So this is the type of card where you want to basically fill the majority of your library up with lands, and then play cards to be able to stick most things in your hand at having like a reliquary tower on the field. So you have so many cards in your hand, so when you play this, you're going to have the majority of your deck in your hand. So as soon as this comes out into play, when it enters the battlefield, that's when its trigger goes off. So you play it. As long as you have less cards in your library, you win the game. So your deck is heavily focused around getting the win con off of Thassa's Oracle instead of your commander. But you may play a commander that may help with the crazy draw or getting the lands into play. So next, we actually want to go over the cards that are going to be not really playable or straight up banned from the Commander format. The first off is a banned card, so you cannot play this in a it's not really sanctioned, but like an official kind of a commander tournament. It is Coalition Victory for 3 in Wooburg, which is the white, blue, black, red, green, if you're unfamiliar with the term. It's a sorcery. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. So if you control a plains, island, swamp, mountain, and forest, and you could have a creature that has all 5 colors in it, so basically 6 permanents, could have you win the game when you play this card. So that's so easy to be able to get off. So I can definitely see why it's banned. Because you run a 5-color deck, this is just going to be so easy to be able to pull off. That it's just, yeah, consistently be able to grab this card to play it to win. Because it's not at the beginning of your upkeep or anything like that. Once you play it, you will win the game if you meet these conditions. The next card is actually, this is tournament or commander legal, but it is a waste of time to put it in your commander deck. It is Battle of Wits. It's an enchantment that costs 3 and 2 blue. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 200 or more cards in your library, you win the game. Welcome to Commander, where our decks are only made of 100 cards. And that includes the commander, so really, your library only has 99. You are not going to be able to pull this combo off. Or not really combo, but the win condition, you're not going to be able to get it. So those are very awesome cards to be able to win in Magic. I would love to thank you for watching this video and sticking all the way to the end of the video. I could definitely not be able to have this channel and provide all the content to you, the viewer, for being able to view the videos, comment, subscribe, or any of that without you. So I definitely appreciate your views, your likes, your subscriptions, your comments. So thank you for visiting the channel, and I definitely hope to continue to bring you Magic the Gathering content. And definitely be sure to check out this video and others on my channel, and hit that subscribe button right there in the corner if you haven't already.